This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk all about the end of Ryujinx, a newly proposed California law regarding digital purchases, Final Fantasy IX remake coming in multiple parts, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 52. I am your host, the man who is looking into making the Orange Box Podcast show up on those PS5 ads, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man whose per episode fee will increase from $20 to $50, Justin, better known as I Am Zaracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
First, before I get into that, I just want to say it's incredible how this is episode 52. I mean, when you think about it, it makes sense, but I just can't believe that it's been a whole year since we started. So
right.
That's definitely, wow, that's just really something.
It's crazy.
Right there. But as far as the week has gone, not too bad. I thought about doing something recently where possibly using the media computer that I have, possibly using that to game on, since the laptop that I've been using has gotten a little hot as of late, and just like unreasonably hot, and so I wanted to try doing something a little different. So I tried booting up the PC, and it got past the initial I got splash screen for the motherboard, but then after that it just was black, and so then I retried it again, and same thing. And then I thought, let me check and see some stuff, and I looked and I saw that there was a orange light on my motherboard, and I said, okay, that's not good, let me check something out here. So initially I thought it probably could have been like the RAM, because I looked up on the online, people said, yeah, it's probably something with the RAM. So I tried switching out the RAM, also tested each stick, but still orange light. And then so then I said, okay, let me test each part individually. And eventually, after testing everything, I saw that it was the CPU, and I was like, okay, let me try updating the BIOS, see if there's an issue with that. So I did that, and fortunately, even with that, there was an orange light still. And so right now, it's possibly either the CPU itself or the motherboard. I'm not certain which it is. I mean, I could try testing. I don't really want to go out and pull out the CPU, my other CPU that I was going to use for my actual gaming PC. I don't want to pull that out just yet to test it out. So I'm going to try to decide what I want to do there, but at least I've sort of narrowed down the issue there. But yeah, so that's pretty much, I guess, the key highlights of my week.
Now, I'm assuming that you just made sure everything was plugged in fully and plugged in the right spots.
Yes, and I also, because that definitely was something I was checking to make sure, and then also making sure that I mean, I didn't completely take it off because I didn't feel like reseating the cooler and stuff, but I was also trying to make sure that the CPU itself was, at least from what it appeared to be, properly seated. But yeah, everything else seemed to be pretty good after unplugging and replugging.
Okay. Yeah, because I feel like anytime I had issues with getting my computer to boot up when I was doing builds, or, like modifying things from that standpoint, that it was almost always just a cable was a little bit loose. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you've used this one before and it hasn't had issues, then that wouldn't be it most likely anyway. But well, I hope you get that all resolved and without having to spend a bunch of money on it or anything else. But at least installing a CPU if you did decide to just use the one from your that's going to be in your gaming PC, it's pretty easy to take in and put back, or take out and put back in, and all that. So yeah, well, good luck on that, I guess. In terms of my week, in general, hasn't been all that eventful. We did music on Sunday that worked out just fine. Saturday was pretty busy the whole day, but most of what I ended up doing, apart from just like prepping for the music on Sunday, was dividing the podcast up into individual clips, or rather, I had already divided it up as I was editing on Thursday, but then when I actually when Saturday rolled around, then I started taking those clips and uploading them, and then making thumbnails for each segment, and then scheduling them to go up certain days. So all the segments will be up before the next episode of the podcast goes up on Friday. So some of those have been getting decent views. Most of them, it's really low, like under 10. But like the Ghost of Tsushima one has around 200 some odd views, or maybe just under 200, which is, for those types of videos, it's not bad. I'm perfectly fine with that. And the big thing, more than anything else, is it's intended to be advertising for the podcast. So, plus a way to kind of fill in the gaps between comparisons, because it'll be a little bit before I have something else ready to go. At least most likely. But I haven't done any further work on the Persona 4 Golden comparison yet. I'm probably just going to essentially leave everything as is, not try re-recording anything else, and just put it up the way it is. Or rather, that is, edit it the way it is. At most, I might re-record the first 20 minutes from the Switch version, just to get that weird purple line removed from the screen, but that's the only thing I might consider doing, and even that, I'm not really sure if I actually want to go through the hassle of doing that, or if I'm just going to completely leave it alone. I need to look at my footage again and see where I am with that, whether or not it's going to be worth the hassle, because either way, I'm not redoing the entire thing, but I do want to get to work on actually making some edits, so we'll see when that actually happens. But otherwise, nothing really eventful, except that allergies have been kicking my butt, because I have fall allergies like all the time. Fall is one of the worst times for me when it comes to allergies, and just like it'll get stuffy and or very sneezy, and it's just like I'm the Seven Dwarves over here, 7 dwarves all in a 5'11" man. So anyway, so what have you been playing this past week?
All right, so in light of our discussion from last week, I decided to jump back into Power World, and just partially also to see some of the new additions that were made to the game. Sadly, performance on the Steam Deck is still pretty much the same, and granted, the performance being shown is from the PC version. But then I realized the fact that the game actually uses Unreal Engine 5, so that could be a good reason as to why
probably
definitely isn't really stable. Sure, it's still in early access, but yeah, Unreal Engine definitely 5 definitely really hurts the performance. But did some exploring. Oddly enough, I kept running into a bunch of enemies, a bunch of different grunts and soldiers and stuff like that, which is very unusual because I haven't seen that many clumped together. So after I finished fighting one group, there was another group not too far away, and so it was just consecutive. And in fact, I even happened to come across 2 camps, enemy camps, during that period, so that was definitely interesting. Definitely farmed a lot of ammo, so that's pretty nice in that respect. Definitely saw a couple new pals that I don't believe were in the version I had played when I had last played. So that was interesting there. I'm still not strong enough to face any more main bosses. That's something that I still need to just grind out, get some better gear, especially with weapons, because I think that I can survive long enough to, or at least if it was a battle of attrition, I could survive. But the problem is, because there's a 10-minute time limit, I don't deal enough damage to actually whittle down enough health. So that's the big problem. So I just need to get better weapons. So definitely need to grind so I can unlock more gear in that respect. My friends and I, when we went to the next game, played some Satisfactory together. That's a game we played a long while ago, but the game finally had its full 1.0 release, so we got back into that. We had no idea what we were doing since it had been such a long time since we played. But it's definitely, I'd say, improved in some degrees. I'm not great with logistics types of games, so games where you just like build a base and then figure out how all the pieces work and figure out how to make things more efficient. I leave that to them. I'm the guy who just goes, I collect materials we need, I'll go hunting if necessary. That's what I do. Anything as far as like building the base, constructing stuff, figuring out where to place this, where to place that, that's not what I do. That I'm not good at that. So I help out as I can. But it still was fun getting back into that as well. I also played a little bit more of Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duelists, and partially because a friend of mine, he recently bought the game, and he said he wanted to play it, and also I said that's fine. And mainly he wanted to know about the achievements because there were 2 multiplayer achievements, and I was going to test it out. And strangely enough, there didn't seem to be anyone playing online for the multiplayer segments, which was weird, and not in both the ranked and unranked modes, because I wanted just to test something out, see how people are playing online, because Yu-Gi-Oh! Definitely has changed a whole lot since like the earlier days as far as like the rules and the meta and all that stuff. But yeah, so nothing too much there, but I did play more of the campaign, and it definitely because I switched back to, originally I've been playing with my custom decks, but I went back and decided, I'm going to try using one of the story decks. And I really feel like the characters in the TV show were really cheating because of how they got such good cards.
Right.
I mean, I pulled out a couple of cards and I was like, wow, this is what it must feel like to be Seto Kaiba right now, just pulling out something like that. But yeah, definitely good there. And then just 2, I guess, quick mentions, just because one I didn't play much of, and the other one is just a whole lot of grinding, is Metroid Dread, which I was just playing to get some footage for a video, and the other one was more Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. I still haven't gotten to level 100 of grinding. I'm close enough now. In fact, right before we started the podcast, I was doing a little bit more grinding, so I'm at level 95 for Riku, just 5 more levels, and I'll finally be done, where I can at least finish his story mode and be done with that, and then just wrap up story and be done. Hopefully, I should be done next week, but just jumping from level 54 to level 100 definitely takes a long time.
Yeah. Well, more power to you for being willing to grind that much. I don't know that I could do that without using some kind of exploit to do that, unless I was just like having so much fun with it that I was willing to keep going. But I don't know. That's tough sometimes. I know, like with Destiny, there have been times throughout the years where I'll be grinding something out, like having to get a certain number of kills with a specific gun in order to get it to a point where it can have its special catalyst, which typically will make it stronger and give it some like additional perk. and sometimes it's not even necessarily worth it, but it's just kind of like completionist aspect that these exotic guns, I want to get the catalyst and get it fully, completed. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and the real reason why it's just such a pain is because with Sora's mode, he has so much side content, especially with you trying to get all the collectibles. He has so much more that you can do. So as you're getting that content, you do level up with that.
Right.
Whereas with Riku, there is no additional side content, so you can just go straight through the game. And I mean, by the time I got to the final floor, I was roughly level 46, whereas with Sora, I was more like 67. So that definitely really slows things down quite a bit.
Yeah, I bet. Well, once again, more power to you for being willing to put in that kind of effort. Well, as far as what I've been playing, once again, don't have footage for it, but played more Lego games with the boys and Mario Party with the boys and my wife. Just, keep doing that. I will say, I know that the new Mario Party is either coming out soon or is already out, and I'm honestly not interested in it, mostly because assuming that it takes more after the first Super Mario Party game, because this one's Super Mario Party Jamboree, I did not like the Super Mario Party game nearly as much as I like Mario Party Superstars, which is more of a traditional one. The Super Mario Party, they just do some weird stuff, because they make it it's single Joy-Con play, and they kind of do more gimmicky, motion-based mini-games and stuff like that. And, I mean, that's not all bad, but it's mostly that the boards really sucked in that game. Because the classic Mario Party game boards are really good. And the ones in Super Mario Party were trash. They sucked. They weren't nearly as much fun. And I don't know, it was too gimmicky for my taste. But anyway, so yeah, we're playing Mario Party Superstars. That's all we're playing. I wish that there were more boards, because I do like the ones we have, but I just kind of wish that there was a little more variety from that state. But at least the mini games are fun, and it's fun playing with the boys and all that. So, but beyond that, I did go ahead and played a little bit of Persona 5 Royal, which specifically I did it for my next comparison. Well, one of the next comparisons. It isn't going to be the one I do immediately next. I'm probably going to go ahead and go with Persona 4 Golden first, and then do Persona 5 Royal right after that. The main reason I'm deciding to do it that way is because of the fact that I figured out a better location for recording, and as a result, it is so much better. So the place I'd been recording for all the previous comparisons was always on my kitchen table, or dining area table. And interestingly enough, it's the same table that we used when I was growing up. So this is the one that my parents had for 30 plus years, and now I've had for a few years myself. And the problem with that area is that there's no direct lighting right nearby. The closest lighting is on the opposite side of the table, where the chandelier thing is above the table. So, sometimes you'd end up with a glare on the screen, and because of the fact that I'd have to sit down to play because the table was just a little too low for me to be able to stand up easily, I occasionally, when trying to get it under the mount, I couldn't quite see the screen because of the glare, and it was just various issues with that. So it finally occurred to me, I could record in the kitchen. I have a black granite countertop. Perfect place to record. I mean, yes, most of the time it's a mess in there, and so obviously I had to clean up the counter in order to make it usable. But there's a bunch of overhead lighting, so I can have consistent lighting in there no matter what time of day it is. I can have a lot more lighting but it's not shining so much directly on the screen, so there's not as much of an issue with glare. And furthermore, because it's higher up, I can actually just stand up while I'm playing, so I can always see the screen perfectly fine without having to constantly shift the position of the system in order to do that. So that is very, very, very helpful. And so yeah, I recorded some Persona 5 Royal, and I think I did everything I want to do for that. I haven't fully decided if I want to play a little bit further, because like technically I could do more and I could get like some more gameplay, but as it stands, I think altogether the total clips I have, rather the segments, because of the fact that I couldn't record it all in one sitting, or in one standing, I guess you could say, ended up being like hour and a half to 2 hours. I'm not sure exactly. I'd have to actually put them all together to figure out exactly where it was. Because like the first time I started recording, I hadn't thought about the fact that my phone would probably need to be plugged in while I was recording, so I didn't run out of battery power. And so like I got to a point where I basically I didn't have any battery power left. I was able to get my phone plugged in, but even then I ran out of space on my phone, because doing 4K 60 videos, they take up a lot of space. So it's like, okay, this isn't, I was able to get a good amount recorded, but not everything. And so then I had to do a separate recording session. And even then I couldn't do the full thing I wanted to do, because it was the only time I could really do it was during the day when the kids were like watching TV shows in the other room. So anyway, as far as the game goes, I mean, of course, Persona 5 Royal, I've, played plenty. I mean, I played a good chunk of the game on PS4 before I got it for the Switch. And I played through the entire game that way. And that's after having already played through vanilla Persona 5 twice on PS4 so that I could get the platinum. And I mean, that wasn't back to back, but it was, over the course of a couple of years. Like I played through 2017 and then again in 2020 or 2019, something like that. But anyway, so the visuals and performance, 30 frames per second as expected. It looks fairly good on the Switch OLED screen. One thing that definitely is not entirely clear in the video, just because, I mean, like it's as clear as it can be from the angle, from the distance that it is from the screen, but the character models, particularly, in anything that's not just like the portraits that you see on the screen, those are definitely fairly blurry. I mean, it doesn't look bad. It's just that it's not as clear as it could be, and the video doesn't entirely show that. Like, you can't tell necessarily looking at it. It might be easier to tell once you do it side by side with the Steam Deck whenever I get a chance to record it there. But I don't know for sure if that's going to be this weekend or if I'm going to do it later, or how exactly all that's going to work just yet. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on that front, I believe. Yeah, so I'll probably mess around with how I display the clips here, because the clip that I inserted is like a shorter clip because I didn't have enough room on my phone to record as long as I wanted to, and so I'm just going to have to play around with all that later on. But obviously the game that I played by far the most has been God of War Ragnarok. So once again, playing both on PC and Steam Deck. The footage here is from my PC, because that's where I recorded more footage. Although I did do some recording on the Steam Deck, I mostly wanted to do one of the fights against one of the Berserkers for my footage, because the Berserker fights are the most challenging boss fights in the game, other than perhaps the Valkyrie Queen. That is another optional boss fight that I'm nowhere near being able to do that yet. But I think I've beaten now 5 or 6 of the Berserkers. I want to say it's 6, but I'd have to look again. The one that I am showing here is one that I've beaten on PS4 and I've beaten now on PC. And even though like I know his attack patterns well enough to where I can dodge them a lot of the times, he's still a hassle because his attacks are all lightning based, and if you get hit by lightning too much, you get stunned, and if you are stunned long enough, he can hit you and then potentially kill you really fast. And on top of that, when facing him, I was technically 2 levels underneath him, and since the game only has like maximum of 9 levels in the base game and 10 in New Game Plus, I believe, it just made it more challenging. So I think when I fought him initially, I came super close to beating him the second time I fought him, and then after that I just had a bunch of like, okay, I got really close but I didn't quite beat him, and that just kept happening over and over and over, and finally in this recording that I have here, I was able to beat him, and I have no idea how many tries it took, but I definitely was. He was definitely higher level than me when I fought him on PC than when I fought him on PS4. So he was a greater challenge from that standpoint, but I also knew his attack patterns well enough to where I could dodge a lot of them. It was just mostly getting shocked and that sort of thing that became annoying. And I don't have the full fight recorded, but I'll probably still include it in the final footage what I do have. So there's another Berserker that I fought today actually, and this one is actually like right at my level basically. So initially I thought, okay, I can take him. I like attempted once on a break this afternoon, and I lasted for a little bit, but like he is a green health bar, meaning that he's the same level as me. His attack patterns are pretty much identical to the lightning guy, except that he throws poison instead. And I thought, okay, well, he's a green. I should be able to take him, and I know the attack pattern well enough, apart from some of the attacks being slightly different because of the fact that they're poison based instead of electric based. But the main thing that ended up making him a real pain in the butt, even though I don't think it took me as many tries with him as the other guy, is that he also summons other enemies to help him fight. And so instead of being just dealing with that jerk, it's also dealing with a bunch of other enemies that are distracting me from him. And if I try focusing on him too much, then I end up getting hit by other enemies. If I focus too much on other enemies, I end up getting hit by him. And it's just like, annoying. But yeah. So I know I fought at least I've defeated at least 5 of them, and potentially 6. I'd have to look at my records again and see where I got, but there are 12 of them total, and I can't remember if the 12 includes the Berserker King or if that's 12 plus the Berserker King. And I think it's the latter. So either way, enjoying it. Story wise, I am further than I was in PS4. Though there's some of the side stuff that I did on PS4 that I haven't done here, and there's a lot more side stuff I've done here that I hadn't done yet on PS4. So it's kind of a mixed bag, but I'd say overall I'm further in this than I was on PS4. So that's that. That's all I got.
Nice. And you actually answered the question I was going to ask you about how far you were with the PC version of God of War compared with the PlayStation version. So definitely interesting to see that you've gone further with the story mode, and there's a bit of a mix and match between the side content there. But with the Berserkers though, you've beaten more on the PC version than the PS4 version.
I'm pretty sure I have. I think I've beaten all the ones. I think all the ones I've beaten on PC, I had beaten on PS4. and I've beaten like 2 other ones on PC, but I could be wrong on that. I'd have to just double check because like I know that there's at least 3 of them that I fought on PS4 and beat there that I've also beaten on PC, and then I know that there's at least 2 on PC that I did not fight on PS4. So
Okay, and I'm based on the way I'm hearing it then, so you can sort of tackle them in any order. Granted, some would be harder, but
right,
you could still like go at choose whichever one you wanted to go to. It's not like you beat this one, then you unlock that one.
right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's basically just like some of them you may not be able to access if you don't have the 3rd weapon yet. I believe in the footage here, this is before I got the 3rd weapon, even though I already knew what it was because I had gotten it on PS4. But yeah, it's just kind of like one of those things that when I see the challenge, I want to do it even if I don't necessarily have to do it, just because of the fact that I like that challenge. I really enjoyed fighting the Valkyries in God of War 2018, and they were the Berserkers in this game are basically the same thing as the Valkyries from God of War 2018. So that they're the main, significantly more difficult bosses that you face compared with what you do in for the main story. The main story is nowhere near as difficult.
Okay. Going back earlier, because I thought one of them had this, and correct me if I'm wrong. Did one of the newer Super Mario Party games did they have DLC for them? I thought one of them had like added more maps or to the game.
I don't think they added more maps. They did add online multiplayer, which you didn't initially have. But I can't remember if they added more maps or not. I just remember that they didn't have like any of the classic boards.
Okay. Okay.
The configuration of their boards was weird.
And one thing I also was curious about, I guess because with the new placement you have, will that definitely make things sort of easier for recording your comparison videos, just because you have that sort of consistent light source as opposed to where you had your videos before? So like you wouldn't necessarily have to worry about, say, the time of day you could be recording.
Right. Yeah. Because the lighting in the kitchen is the same all the time. It's not really affected by sunlight because the windows are pretty far away, whereas the spot I was doing before was right next to the windows. And so that would affect the lighting significantly, whereas now I have a bunch of overhead lights, but they're surrounding in such a way that they're not making anywhere near as much of a glare on the screen. But yeah.
Okay, great.
One thing I do want to just note quickly, I didn't save the recording because I didn't really get anywhere with it. I did briefly try out the demo for Metaphor ReFantasio on the Steam Deck, but there's some significant issues with performance, and it seems to just be a PC issue in general that Atlas is aware of and they're working on. So I wanted to play the demo because it's the entire prologue. Progress transfers over to the full game, even though I'm not planning to get it immediately when it comes out. But I just wanted to try it out because it's like, hey, it's a demo. It's a free demo. I'll check it out. But yeah, I didn't really get to do anything with it. I basically just turned it on briefly, mostly because I was testing out that new recording spot. And I would have included the footage that I had. But for one, I was basically just kind of like skipping through cutscenes and stuff more unintentionally, but more like an accident that I did that. But mostly I just wanted to see how it performed and everything, see whether or not it was really playable. Because initially I was planning to record the full demo and then just post that, the Steam Deck footage specifically, rather do it, on the Steam Deck OLED. But because of the fact that for one, the time of day, I couldn't record to where I could get the kids to be quiet, but also because of the fact that the performance was so bad that it just Like, once I got to a certain point, like the performance was so bad that it was unplayable, and it's just like, okay, I'm not even going to bother with this. I'm just going to leave it alone, especially knowing that there are performance issues on PC right now, and when they fix it later on, I would probably go ahead and record that. And then I can just do that. I don't have to do any editing with it. I can literally just record it and post it. I mean, all I have to do is just add my logo to the video, and that's it. So, and I might do some of that in the future as well. I mean, it's one of those things that I'm thinking about as potential alternate things I can do for the channel that are easier than the comparisons, because the comparisons I want to keep doing, but I need stuff to supplement those because they take so much time that doing them every week is just not realistic. It's just not with my current schedule. I have too much stuff going on, and especially when it comes to something like the Persona 4 Golden, where it's 3 systems being compared, it just takes significantly longer. Plus, of course, there's the issue with how things were recorded, and I'm not going to, even if I re-record a section, I'm still going to do it in the old location just for consistency's sake, because otherwise you'll have the beginning of the video recorded in one location, and then the other 2/3 of the video recorded in a different location. It's like, at that point, I might as well just leave it alone and do the best I can with what I have. So, yeah. All right. Anything else before we get into the news?
No, sir.
All right. So one of our first pieces of news today, of course, last week we talked about Horizon Zero Dawn getting a remaster, and we got news from Sony that they were going to be taking the PS4 version of Horizon Zero Dawn, which has been on a greatest hits kind of thing for a while, and only $20 for a number of years, and they increased the price to $50. So you can no longer get the game for $20 unless you happen to find like a used seller, or if you find some site that didn't get the memo, I guess. I mean, it's possible you could still find it somewhere for cheap, but my guess is that unless you buy it used, you are going to be stuck paying $50 if you want to play this game. So you can pay $50 and then pay the additional $10. Actually, maybe it's $40. I can't remember.
It's 40 if you get the PS4 version upgrade to.
So yes, my mistake. 10. Right. Okay, so it's 40. The price got increased to $40 from $20. So it doubled in price. And then if you wanted the PS5 remaster, you can pay an extra $10, and then you get that. Or you can just, I think you can just straight out buy a PS5 version that would be the $50. Either way, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. There's no reason why an old game, especially a previous gen game, should have a price increase. I mean, what is it with Sony recently increasing the prices of products that should be going down rather than up in a generation? This is definitely very weird. And I've definitely seen a whole lot of people defending this, saying, "Oh, people had a chance to get it for free for years. It was part of the special giveaways and sales and stuff like that. People, if they wanted to play Horizon, they had time to do it." Yeah, what if they didn't have a PS4 or PS5 at the time, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna pick one up now. I'm gonna get this Horizon Zero Dawn game and give it a chance. And it's more expensive than it was at the time when, way back. Like, there's no reason for this to happen, in my opinion. It's completely ridiculous, the fact that a game that was $20 is now twice as much. That's and I mean, even if you say and this is a very big stretch, if you said the physical version, why would a digital version go up in price as well? I mean, consider the fact that it costs less to have a digital version of a game than a physical version, because you have to print the copies, you have to ship them out, you have to pay for shelf space. So if you said and again, I do not defend this at all, the physical being more expensive, but if it was more expensive, I could understand through mental gymnastics the logic behind that. But for the digital version to also be $40 is insane. Again, this is a game that came out 7 years ago. Originally 60, eventually made its way down to 20. Now we're getting it back up to 40. I mean, this is absurd. I mean, yeah, that's really all I have to say. This is ridiculous. There's no excuse for this.
Yeah, I agree completely. It is incredibly stupid, and you have to be a fanboy in order to just accept this and say that this is okay. Because it's not. It's insane that they are increasing the price, especially for the greatest hits version. It's like, you literally are not even getting the original, like, nice looking art. Like, I have it right here. Let me grab it. So, like, I have Horizon Zero Dawn Complete Edition on PS4. Very nice art, all that. I'm pretty sure I either got it for 20 or 30. I can't remember which, because I got it in 2018. So, it was already, heavily discounted by the time I got it. I'm glad I waited, because I would not have been able to give it the time it deserved had I tried playing it in 2017 when Breath of the Wild came out and the Switch, and I was completely obsessed with that. And of course, then there was other games that came out in 2017 that I was obsessed with, like Persona 4 or Persona 5 and various other things. But the fact that they are increasing the price, you're getting the like less nice looking artwork, and having to spend more on it, that's stupid. It is so stupid, and there's no excuse for this. I know I'm repeating myself over and over, but there is no excuse for this. This is literally just Sony milking that pay pig, and that is a weird phrase, milking the pay pig, milking the cows. Smoking and butchering the pay pig. I don't know, but the point is, it's like, if you guys would not accept this, they wouldn't do it. But you accept it. You will bend over backwards to accept anything they do. If Xbox did the same thing, they would be roasting them so much, and I think that it would be just as bad if Xbox did it. There is no reason why the price should increase. Now, it's one thing to say, yes, we'll charge an extra $10 for the upgrade. That's fine. But the game is 7 years old. Someone could literally just... I don't know. I'm going to say right now, if you want to play this game on PS5, don't spend $50. Find yourself a used copy. Hopefully you can find someone who hasn't caught on to the price increase, and will give it to you for $20 or less. And then you're not getting ripped off like what Sony's doing to you right now, because it's not worth it. It just isn't. And I do want to note something. I want to take back what I said about them making Aloy look better. I think that there are some shots where she looks better in the remaster, but overall they did make her look worse. So it's like, yeah, I guess that's not surprising. I mean, that was what I was expecting in the first place, and I thought that I was proven wrong, but no, I wasn't. I mean, they did make her look better in the key art for like the cover, but when you're actually in game, like, the majority of the time she looks worse than she did before. So whatever. Like, I don't care if people want to buy it. Some people they want to replay it, they're willing to spend the extra money, that's fine. But I just think it's stupid to charge people $50 for a 7-year-old game. Or $40.
Last gen too.
Yeah, a last gen game for $40, and then plus a $10 upgrade fee. So, it's stupid. I don't know if there's anything else I can say that isn't just repeating that phrase over and over. And I know that people who watch this video, there's going to be fanboys who are going to defend this, because of course there are. It's like, I like the game. and I liked what I played of Forbidden West. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm not okay with this. I think this is stupid. I don't think anybody should ever be doing this. The price should not increase for an old game. The remaster, if people were buying the PS5 version exclusively and they were having to spend $40 for the PS5 version, I think that would actually be pretty reasonable. If they're buying a physical copy, $40 for the PS5 version, it's the remaster, all that, okay, that's one thing. But it's a whole different story when you're taking a last-gen PS4 game and you're upping the price by $20 plus the $10 upgrade fee. And I know people are going to defend it. Some of the people are defending it, like you said, and saying, well, you could have gotten this free all this time. It's like, well, for one, it wasn't actually free. You got it as part of PlayStation Plus, which was not free. You spend, back when the thing first came out, I think at that point they had already done the price increase. And even if they hadn't, you were still spending at least $60 a year for PlayStation Plus. It was probably more by that point. Now it's more. Now it's $80 minimum for a year. And so saying like, oh, you should have gotten it back then. Well, some people didn't have a PlayStation back then. But as far as I'm concerned, do whatever you can. If you want to play this game, find the cheapest version you can find and don't dare give Sony money. And I'm not saying don't give it like I'm going to be mad at you. I'm saying for your own sakes, do not give them $40 for a PS4 game when it was $20 a week ago. Just don't. Don't do that. Don't give in to them, because then they're just going to keep doing this crap. And then other companies are going to do it too. Don't let Sony keep setting these bad examples and letting it just become precedent, like the $70 games. That has become the standard now for most new games, thanks to Sony. Sony doing it first. Okay, anyway, I'm done. All right, any other thoughts on that?
No, sir. No, sir.
Well, we'll come back to Sony a bit later, just because I don't want to feel like we're only beating up on Sony. Because there's definitely some other stuff worth making fun of, and other stuff just worth talking about in general. So, one of those things that is a topic that just makes me like and facepalm. I hope that it's just trolling. But we recently had Yoshi P, who is one of the Final Fantasy XIV director. And he was asked about the possibility of remakes of Final Fantasy games. And he knows that there are requests for Final Fantasy IX remake, which was in the NVIDIA leak, has been something that supposedly is happening for a while now. But here's what he had to say about the Final Fantasy IX remake. I do know there are requests for Final Fantasy IX to be made, but when you think about Final Fantasy IX, it's a game with huge volume. When you think about all that volume, I wonder if it's possible to remake that as a single title. It's a difficult one. It is a tough question. Now, to be clear, Final Fantasy IX originally released in 2000 on the PlayStation 1. I can actually grab my PS1 copy. Somewhere. My original black border Final Fantasy IX. And then it came out later as a PS1 classic for PS3 and PSP, where I have it. And then got support for Vita in 2012. Then it was released for mobile and PC in 2016. And then came to PS4 in 2017 and Xbox One and Switch in 2019. And I'll grab my my physical of Switch version. But you can go ahead and take it away on your thoughts.
Oh boy. Okay, yeah. So I really hope that he's not being serious. Good, very good style there. But I really hope he's not being serious. I really hope that this isn't a thing, because there's no reason why this game should take multiple parts to tell the story. I feel like they could possibly could do that, considering the fact that Final Fantasy VII was successful with it. So they might say that's justification enough for us to do it. But I really don't think so. I mean, the game was on the PS1. How are we going to stretch it out so that it's multiple parts? I mean, it's really ridiculous. And I feel like the only way you could actually do that is if you just really stretch out every detail and fill the game out with so much padding that you say it's worth doing it. And I mean, something like that is how we got the Hobbit trilogy. I mean, taking something that was a single work and then stretching out so much and padding it with so much extra detail that didn't necessarily need to be there. I mean, granted, Hobbit had a lot of extra details that shouldn't have been there, but doing something like that makes it completely pointless, and it's really not worth it. At most, and this is a very big at most, if you made it 2 games, I still wouldn't like that. But if you're going to say multi-volume, that sounds as if though you want to make the game at least 3 titles. Maybe see if we can do 4, but I definitely would see it as being 3 titles. 3 different games. It's really not necessary to do that, and I'm really hoping that that's not true. But as a side note, just I thought was very interesting was he was also asked about which game he would like to remake given the chance, and he said he wanted to do Final Fantasy III. I just thought that was interesting because not too many people talk about Final Fantasy III. I mean, granted, people probably talk about that more than 2, which was considered to be one of the worst of the original sort of Final Fantasy games, but I thought that was interesting. 3's not a bad game, it just does not hold a candle to anything that came after it.
Right.
But overall, though, for the main part of this discussion, I just hope it's not true, because I do not like that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if either he is completely trolling or if he just doesn't know about this remake that's supposedly already that's already being done. I don't know. I really do not like the idea of doing this. Now, to be fair, I wasn't really a fan of the idea of them doing it with Final Fantasy VII, but I ended up really liking Remake, and I've heard Rebirth is even better from what everyone's been saying, and Rebirth does a lot more of the story, basically, as far as I know, where, Remake was just until you left Midgar, basically. They really stretched that out, but not in a way that I thought was bad. I actually thought it worked just fine. Rebirth basically takes you to the end of Disc 1. So, I mean, when you consider Disc 2 is not technically as long as Disc 1, I mean, I know that the third game is supposed to just be the rest of the story. So, at least we know that, the third game will cover, what's left of the Final Fantasy VII story with whatever alternate stuff they do with it. And I have no idea what that's going to be, but doing that with Final Fantasy IX, while I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to the idea of a Final Fantasy IX remake being different in some ways, I don't want them to Nomura it like they did with Final Fantasy VII. Because, I think Remake has incredible gameplay, despite being obviously a very padded version of that early story from Final Fantasy VII. But I thought it also, it did a good job with developing some of the characters more, like characters like Jessie, for example, and Biggs and Wedge, because Biggs and Wedge and Jesse, they were all like very short-lived, literally and figuratively, in the original game, and in remake and rebirth. I mean, like I don't know what, if any, part any of them have in rebirth, but in remake, it seems like at least one of them may have survived. I mean, it's hinted at the end. I mean, a bit of a spoiler, but whatever. I mean, I don't even know if you'll ever even play these games, but like I don't know what even happens in rebirth yet exactly, other than like the major event that happens at the end of disc 1 still happens in rebirth. That's the only thing I know, but beyond that I don't really know anything about the rest of it. So I don't like the idea of Final Fantasy IX remake being split up like that. I just don't want Square Enix to milk it out. And I mean, my hope is that because of the fact that Final Fantasy IX remake was in the NVIDIA leak, that it's something that's already being worked on, and that it is just going to be a true to the original remake. Don't mess with the formula, just very simply update the visuals and all of that, and that's all you need to do. Just update the visuals. You can re-record the soundtrack, of course, that'd be great. Obviously redo all the cutscenes and all that. It's like, yes, remake, it doesn't have to be a full-blown, like, turn it into an action game. I just don't think that's necessary. Even though I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to it, I also want, for fans who are, like, really big on the original game, to not have it changed like that. It's just not necessary. 7, I felt like, was much less of an issue, mostly because of the fact that with the way that Advent Children and everything took the direction that took the Final Fantasy VII story, it felt like it fit a little bit better, but I don't know. And also just the idea that remake and that the new trilogy is essentially taking place after Advent Children, after the events of Advent Children, potentially. Not that I know whether or not they've said anything like that in the story. It was just a theory that was presented after remake came out that actually made me go from hating what they did with the story to be like, oh, okay, I'm cool with that. I'm perfectly fine with that. You're not erasing the original story. You're just taking what Sephiroth said at the end of Advent Children and using it to do your crazy Nomura crap with. And it's like, okay, fine. You're not erasing the original story. You're just adding on to it. It's like, I'm fine with that. I can live with that. Anyway. Yeah. I'm just waiting to see what's going to happen with this. I hope that this idea of it being multiple games is either trolling or that he just has no idea what he's talking about. But that's all I got. All right, you have anything else?
No, sir.
Alrighty. Well, you want to talk about this new California law or potential law?
Yeah. So recently, and I think this happened last week sometime, California Governor Gavin Newsom, he signed a bill into law over there that prevents companies from they have to be upfront and disclose if the products they provide, whether this is for video games, movies, shows, etc., they have to be transparent if these things are actually able to be owned by the people that buy them. So, as it says in this article from IGN, aspired by The Verge, the law, AB 2426, will prohibit storefronts from using the words buy, purchase, or any other term which a reasonable person would understand to confer an unrestricted ownership interest in the digital good or alongside an option for a time-limited rental. And so, essentially, they have to make sure everything is in plain English and that no one could be confused about such things being purchased. Oh, and also it applies to ebooks, music, and any other sort of digital media as well. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. It doesn't go into effect until next year. I don't think there's an actual date that I recall seeing as far as like it goes live this day, but definitely just goes out into effect next year. So this is already done. It's already going to happen, but just hasn't kicked in yet. So I've got a couple things that I'll say, but do you want to start off though?
Yeah, so I like the idea of this, theoretically. It's good to start forcing vendors to do this. I'm just wondering how much they're actually going to enforce it. And furthermore, I'm wondering what that's going to mean for all of the previous purchases that people have done through digital storefronts. I mean, are these storefronts suddenly going to start saying, hey, just so you know, just FYI, all these things that you quote unquote purchased previously are just licensed out to you and we can take away the license at any time? I mean, is that what they're going to do? Are they just not going to say anything and just let people figure it out themselves when they eventually get their stuff taken away? You know, how's this going to work? And is it going to expand beyond California? Like, I'm no fan of Gavin Newsom. I'm no fan of just the hellhole that California has become. And this is as someone who was born in California, lived there for 16 years before I moved to Alaska. And, like, California is not a place that I would ever think of as home despite being born there. Because it's so far from being aligned with anything I believe or value or anything else. Basically, the only thing good about California is that it's a pretty place in general. But it is absolutely awful. And I think that the song from Spinal Tap is a good descriptor for California. And I'm not going to, of course, include that song in the podcast, but I may link to it in the description just for the sake of people being able to hear that. Spinal Tap is hilarious, by the way. A hilarious mockumentary from the early 80s, and it's, oh man, it is. I mean, you have to recognize it's satire. Don't take it seriously, because otherwise you may be very offended by some of the stuff in there. But, oh man, it's so funny. Anyway, yeah, that's everything I have on that front.
Yeah, I initially, I definitely agree. I was in the mindset of, a good idea from a politician and from California of all places. That I'm like, is there an odd change in the weather right now? Are very hot places freezing over? But then I thought about it and I wonder what's to prevent, say, these companies from saying, okay, we have to disclose if these games are, or any sort of media is being licensed or not. So we just won't sell you anything that that you'll get to keep. So I wonder if these types of storefronts will decide, okay, we have to disclose if we're going to offer that to you, but we just won't do it anymore. And so you still will have to buy this from us, whether you like the fact that it's a license or not. And I mean, could this even potentially sometime down the road get them to say, okay, you know, instead of just doing this type of thing where we sell licenses, we're just gonna make more subscription things where, you know, we don't have to worry about having any type of disclaimer, whether it's like, oh, you know, this is a license, you have it temporarily. We don't have to worry about doing all that legal jargon or anything like that. Let's just go ahead and make more subscriptions. You know, that way people just go and pay us more money, have that reoccurring revenue. Don't have to worry about any type of disclaimer. People can get what they want. We can still pull it out because legally it's a subscription service. They know they're not going to be able to keep it. So we can just keep doing what we're doing here. That's the type of thing that I am concerned about. And again, it's not that it will happen, but I'm just looking at the worst case scenario, which is something similar to something that happened several years ago with how there was a proposal for like trying to stop scalpers online and stuff from buying stuff like that. So I'm partially concerned if this is just a case of government doing something in a misguided attempt to do something good, but somehow it might end up it might turning on the consumers in the long run. So I'm not opposed to this in theory, just I'm hoping the execution doesn't ruin things down the road. But we'll definitely see when that time comes. But it definitely is good to know if you're buying something, if you're actually going to keep it. I know certain things I definitely do not have any type of assumption that I actually own unless there is some type of offline file I can use, and that's something I can easily just transfer. Like if I'm like, I don't buy anything type of ebooks off of Amazon because I know that those things are completely licensed to Amazon. You need to have like a Kindle or something like that in order to even just use those ebooks. Some stuff like music, I've gotten back to buying CDs now or something like that just because digital stuff, I definitely avoid Spotify, I like to play because it's streaming. You know, you're not actually getting to put the music on your phone or anything like that, or if you have it on your computer and listen to it there, or like go travel and take it with you. You always need to have a constant access unless you pay for a premium and you can do stuff like that. But again, you're paying for something that you aren't actually keeping. So I do feel like to a degree, some people should know if what they're buying actually is something they own or not. I feel like that's something that is a bit of a problem, that some people just aren't thinking about it. And I don't think it's something that you necessarily have to be good with technology to know, but it's just something that I feel like to a degree, if you've been using technology on a pretty regular basis, it should be something that's kind of common sense to know whether something you're purchasing is buying or just renting. But still, having that clarity is a good thing, though.
Yeah, for sure. We'll just have to see what happens with it, but I don't know. I'm pessimistic about whether or not companies will be really honest about it. And of course, your idea of potentially they're just going to use this as a reason to do more subscription services, well, that seems pretty likely. So I guess we'll just watch and wait and see what happens. All right. Well, speaking of things that you don't own, Ryujinx is getting shut down. And oh my goodness, this is definitely a situation where it's like, all right, Nintendo, it's not surprising that they're going after yet another Switch emulator. I understand from the perspective of, people who solely pirate games, why this is an issue. But there's also plenty of people who they do this because they just want to play the Switch games with better performance. They may even own, I should say theoretically, at least a handful of the people who use Switch emulators also own Switch games and a Switch, and they just want to play the games with better performance and better visuals and things like that. But yeah, Ryujinx is gone. So your thoughts?
Well, the way I interpreted the message that was posted was the fact that was that possibly a deal was made between the creator of Ryujinx and Nintendo, just because the message that was sent didn't seem the words cease and desist were never used, and there was no sort of actual threat that was mentioned. So the way I interpreted it was the fact that Nintendo offered some sort of payment to get it taken down, because I don't think Ryujinx was in a situation where Nintendo could legally sue the developers, because it's not like with Yuzu, where the developers foolishly bundled Switch games with the emulator, which definitely got them in a whole lot of trouble. Ryujinx was a completely separate emulator. There was definitely no type of Switch source code or any type of code in there for them to say like, hey, this is a blatant, copyright violation. It was just, here's the emulator, here you go, use it as you wish. And Nintendo, they legally couldn't do anything about it, so they said, all right, we'll just buy you out instead and give you to shut it down. So that's how I interpreted the message there, which I'm hoping is definitely true, because I mean, hey, if the guy got paid to shut it down, that, I mean, more power to him on that front. But it's definitely a shame though that this has been shut down. I mean, this is the first time I would say that all the emulators for a specific platform were shut down for one reason or another. Like, no other emulator. Okay, actually, no, I take that back. Citra got shut down alongside with Yuzu. So that was the first emulator that actually was completely removed for a platform. So it's the second time that's happened, which is a real shame. Now, something I thought about was, what is the deal with Nintendo all of a sudden shutting down emulators? Because the Yuzu and Ryujinx have been out for a long while. And I think potentially, most likely because of the Switch 2 coming out, that it's going to be the reason why. And maybe also because of backwards compatibility. Maybe not. That could be a reason why, as to why they also want to shut down the Switch emulators. But the timing is just too much of a coincidence for it to not be anything else. Whether that's backwards compatibility or not, the Switch 2 coming out is definitely going to be, in my opinion, is the main reason why Nintendo is all of a sudden now just going to shut down the emulators, because they could have done it a long while ago, but they never did. So that's my reasons why they are doing it. But that being said, though, I mean, you can still find, if you know like where to go, you can find the emulators out there. I mean, I even found the latest version of Yuzu just a couple weeks ago. I saw someone had it, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. I mean, I already had Yuzu backed up before Nintendo shut that down, but I was just like, oh, that's interesting to see it out here in the wild. So I mean, it's not gone for good. You can find it. It just won't be. There's no official site for you to download it from. There's no GitHub. Like, the GitHub was also taken down for Ryujinx. But if you look hard out there, you can definitely find it if you want to. But definitely sad. And eventually maybe we'll get another fork for people who download the source code. Eventually we could and probably will get a fork, but I just don't know how long it'll be for that to happen.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to know that I was wrong on that front. I mean, at least he's getting paid for it, so that's good. I didn't realize that it was quite that. I didn't look that closely into it. I just kind of made assumptions and I was wrong.
I mean, it's not official, but that's just the way I interpret
right.
it, because normally with a season, or whenever Nintendo shuts something down,
right,
there's a whole lot of C&D involved, and they make it quite clear that they're going to be sued if they don't do it.
Yeah, true. So, I mean, at least from that standpoint, at least Nintendo's paying them for it, so that's a good thing. I still don't like the fact that it's being taken down, but like you said, it's probably because of backwards compatibility in the Switch 2, which who knows when we're going to actually get that announced. I'm still hoping for this month. I'm hoping that my original prediction was correct, but, we'll see what happens. I mean, it is already October, which is crazy. I can't believe it's already October, but...
Yes.
Yeah, so... I mean, I do want to make it clear, I've never bothered with such emulation, and it's mostly because the way I feel about emulation is that I will do it if I don't have an easy way to play the game otherwise. And it's not necessarily like, oh, I don't have the hardware, it's more like, I don't have a way to play this game portably. Like, for example, I've emulated Wii U games on the Switch. Or I've emulated, not on the Switch, Wii U games on the a Steam Deck, specifically like Wind Waker HD, because there's currently no Switch version of the game, and while the Wii U version is fantastic, it's not a portable device. Now, granted, I've only played like a little tiny bit of it because I just wasn't really like ready to jump into it. Originally, I thought about doing a comparison whenever the Switch version comes out, but since it doesn't seem like that's happening, I mean, then there's kind of like, okay, no point. And I've been hearing rumblings that I guess Nintendo's now going after people who have, striking basically anyone who has emulation footage on their channel. It's like, oh.
Oof.
I mean, I don't think I have anything other than like maybe like a little single box in the intro video where it shows Wind Waker HD in there, but it's like Nintendo has to be really looking hard to find that because it's there for like 2 seconds. But yeah, I mean, this whole thing about emulation, about whether people pirate a game or they actually own the game, like in the case of Wind Waker HD, which I do own. I still have my physical copy on the shelf. In fact, I could grab it right now. There we go. Wind Waker HD. Physical copy with the disc. I still have my Wii U copy, so I own the game. But it's still just a situation where, like, I know that there's plenty of people who they'll emulate games because they're just wanting to pirate the games. They don't want to pay for them. But a lot of times it's also because of the fact that Nintendo doesn't make them available. You can't buy the games anymore. And so this is the only way that people can play the games. Now, in some cases, yes, they have their stuff on Nintendo Switch Online, so you do typically have a way to pay to play those games. But, I mean, I don't know what else to say on that front. It's a shame that this is happening from that standpoint, but like you said, there are still ways to do it, and people who are really determined will make it happen. Personally, I don't think I'll ever bother with Switch emulation because I already have a portable device that can play the Switch games, and to me it's more of a hassle than it's worth. But yeah, that's my thoughts. So you got anything else?
No, I'm good.
You want to talk about this topic on the ads for PlayStation 5?
Yeah. So recently there was a I'll say what it was, what it's claimed to be. But recently, users of the PS5 pointed out that the games on their homepage were displaying promotional material and news about games that they already own in their library, and which are essentially ads for the game. So instead of the usual art style or backdrops that are normally there, and users were pointing this out, and it definitely spread like wildfire on the internet. And eventually Sony came back and said that this was the result of a tech error that was the reason for these ads on the dashboard. And since then, Sony has come back and fixed it, and things are now better. But it definitely is odd that this happened in the first place, as to why they did it. And additionally, Sony has put out a PS5 system update that has a new feature called Welcome Hub, which is a personalized space with customizable widgets and backgrounds, which is I'm not certain if this is the same thing as how they had with themes in previous PlayStation consoles, but this is something that they've had. But yeah, this definitely was an interesting scenario. Did you want to start off with your opinions?
All right. Well, I'm going to say right now, this was not a glitch. This was intentional. This was 100% intentional. They did this on purpose because they were testing the waters. And as soon as they got backlash, they pulled it back. This is going to happen. this is going to be a normal thing, but they're going to try and ease you into it. So, if you are a PS5 user currently, whether or not you actually experience this, which most likely if you played your PS5 in the past week, you probably experienced it. Some people don't consider them all that intrusive. Some people would defend it regardless because they're fanboys. But the reality is that this was intentional. They did this on purpose. This wasn't a glitch. This was them putting it out there to try and see if they could get away with it. And really, I think that it was not necessarily that they got a bunch of backlash, because it doesn't seem like they really did necessarily get a lot, other than, from people who get outraged about stuff anyway. But most people probably weren't getting all that outraged about it. It's just more like, I think that they maybe if it was a quote-unquote glitch, it was a glitch in that they did it too early, that they did it earlier than they planned to. Now they're probably going to have to pull it back for a little bit longer than they may have originally planned. But I imagine that probably what they're going to end up doing is they will release this. Whether they just do it quietly and do it in the next system update, it's in the system, it's in the notes for the system update, or they will try to market it to make it seem like it's a good thing. That they're including all these advertisements on your homepage. And that people are going to defend it. And people are going to be totally fine with it. Now, I do want to note something. Apart from the fact, of course, obviously, I think it's pretty egregious. It's just like, it's right in your face. It's like, there's no reason why they need to do that. There's just zero reason at all. It's one thing if you go to the PlayStation Store and you have ads and all that, like, okay, that's fine. You go to a Sony website, you have ads, whatever. But doing this on the home screen of your game console, especially when it's stuff that is, in some cases, not even up to date. Like they have, when you have Spider-Man 2 highlighted, it was showing coming soon for the Across the Spider-Verse movie, which is already, I think it was like coming soon to theaters, and it's been out in theaters. It's already out on Blu-ray and has, Blu-ray, DVD, 4K, all that. It has been for quite a while. And, just advertising a game that you literally have highlighted, or advertising paid DLC, things like that. I think that they are going to promote this. And going back, what I was meaning to say before I got myself sidetracked is that Xbox has already done stuff like this. And I don't know when they started doing this. I think it was quite a while back. And I didn't hear about it until recently. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty egregious too. In fact, I think it's actually worse on Xbox from what I've heard. Because it's like just advertising random stuff. It's like not even in any way connected to those games. Like at least the stuff that the PlayStation was displaying was connected to those games. But still, ads for this, they're really pushing that envelope as much as they can after they're already charging you an arm and a leg for all this stuff. Plus paying for online services. Plus, what they're doing with the PS5 Pro, which we've talked about that plenty as it is. It's ridiculous, and I don't think this is necessarily as bad. Well, I don't know. It's hard to say how bad it is, because I think that you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile, and it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And it's that frog, in a boiling pot of water, starts out just a little bit at a time, and after a while, it's boiling and you're gone. Not that you're going to die from PlayStation 5 ads, but I don't know. I don't think any company should be doing this. That is one area where I have to say I appreciate Nintendo, is that the only time that you see any sort of ads on Nintendo, on the Switch, when you first turn on your system, like before, when you're just in like the screen before, like the initial startup screen before you actually go to your game or go to the home screen or anything like that. It'll have news on the side. Sometimes part of that will include advertisements for games that are new or that sort of thing. That's fine because it's not obtrusive. I mean, it's something that you can get past in literally a second. You don't have to deal with any time, like an ad playing or anything like that. And when you're on the home screen, you got nothing. You just got the game icons, and that's it. Even though I do miss themes. Maybe they'll do that with Switch 2. Maybe they'll finally have themes again. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything else to say about this. I feel like I'm just going to keep repeating myself. So take it away.
All right. So first off, I thought of the perfect way for them to get away with this is if they bring it back, upcharge you for $10 for it as an upgrade, and say it's a remaster. That's how they can get away with this. I think that, but I think that this is definitely. I agree that this is not a glitch, because how do you have ads show up as a glitch on the home page?
Yeah,
it's too out of place for it to just be a random glitch. And I think the worst part about this is for some games where it's advertising for like I said, the games that you already own, you're getting advertisements for, or getting being shown all the different praises that a game's getting, which I saw. Who was it? It was, can't remember if this was in okay, it's not in the article, but I think it was something that was shown in one of the Discord servers I'm in. Someone said that a reviewer for one of the games, I can't remember which game it was, I think it might have been Astrobot, thought about how weird it was to see his praise for Astrobot on the PS5 game. It's like, I already praised this game, I'm seeing it again on my TV because of an ad. There's definitely no excuse for this. And I mean, I did not know about Xbox because I just don't play Xbox, never played Xbox, probably never will play Xbox, but I'm not surprised that they did it, considering the fact that the Windows start menu nowadays is just riddled with ads. Granted, I removed all of mine, but if you go into a fresh install of Windows, you have Microsoft Store and you've got Candy Crush. That's when I see constantly up there and stuff like that, and all these other types of stuff right there in the home menu. And it's like, yeah, I believe that Microsoft would also do that for Xbox, and it definitely sucks, and I definitely would call them out for that as well, because you shouldn't be getting ads for a video game console. It's a device that's meant solely to play games. I mean, sure, now with the way consoles are, you can do other stuff besides just play games on them, but the primary reason for a console is the games. So something that you should theoretically, just have as a separate device that does this one thing is now just getting flooded with advertisements for stuff. And I find that completely intrusive and unacceptable, regardless of the platform. And I agree that, ironically enough, Nintendo's bare bones system settings is what keeps it from being riddled with ads. It definitely doesn't have to be that way, considering the fact that the 3DS was great because you had those themes, and you didn't have any ads for that as well. And I mean, man, I remember setting up the Samus Returns as my theme for 3DS, because why not? But yeah, this is just a complete mess that they should not have done. I agree that they probably will reintroduce this sometime down the road. Don't know when, but it definitely could come. But yeah, definitely will come. But they still should probably just do that upcharge of $10 and call it the remaster. Tech error remaster for the PS5. And also has, the PS5 Pro features as well, so now you can get it at 60 FPS 4K. Ooh.
But not guaranteed 60 FPS. And it's actually upscaled from 960p. Yeah, oh my goodness. It is ridiculous. And especially when you consider the fact that if they start pushing this, there's not going to be any way to keep it from showing up. At least on PC, when you're in situations where you're stuck, when we have those annoying ads like all the Windows ones you mentioned with the fresh install of Windows, you can get rid of those pretty easily.
Yeah.
There's not going to be a way to do it on console. Now, maybe if there's enough backlash, that could end up being something that they enable people to disable. But I just imagine that it's probably not going to be the case, and then people are going to just have to deal with it. And many people will defend it. So, yeah. All right. Well, there is one final story I want to cover, and actually, it wasn't in the show notes, but I'll send you the link real quick here, because it was something that came up recently. And I mean, there's some stuff connected to it from the console side of things as well, but this is regarding Monster Hunter Wilds. So, the PC requirements have already been released, and apparently the recommended settings for medium settings at launch is that you are going to have to use frame generation in order to get 60 FPS. On PC. And I mean, connected with this, apparently, at least at Tokyo Game Show, and of course, there's still the potential this could change in the future. But let me back up real quick. The PC settings is that you will need to have either a high-end CPU or frame generation in order to hit 60 FPS at 1080p medium settings. Neither of which are good things. On console, at least on the base PS5, because apparently there's no performance mode for Monster Hunter Wilds, at least currently as of Tokyo Game Show from a demo. That was an unstable 30 frames per second with no performance mode on the base PS5. I believe this is still using the RE engine, if I'm not mistaken. But of course, as was seen with Dragon's Dogma, RE engine, I guess, is not really optimized for open world games, and so this frame rate is definitely concerning. The frame generation, I definitely take big issue with that. But so let me just go ahead and read the summary of what's required. So the recommended settings for 1080p 60 frames per second with frame generation enabled at medium settings. Recommended options include RTX 2070 Super, RTX 4060, or AMD Radeon 6700 XT. Now, I am not sure if that is for... Yeah, that is for the recommended settings, so that's... I cannot understand that. So it requires using FSR and frame generation in order to get that type of situation here. So yeah, that's for recommended under the medium graphics setting, that it will have 1080p 60 frames, but that's only with frame generation, which means input lag. And then, of course, you have, like I said, on top of that, the PS5, base PS5 version, at least at Tokyo Game Show, was only running at 30 frames per second with drops. And that, I guess, sorry, my brain's kind of all over the place right now. Let me try to see if I can explain this better. So the base PS5 version at Tokyo Game Show was running at 30 frames per second, no performance mode, with drops into the 20s. And even with that being the case, like I understand people would say that there is certainly potential that in the next 5 months they could very easily fix that. And like in general, I would say, yeah, that makes sense. They have plenty of time to where they could fix it, they could optimize it. But of course, then there's the reality that they already have the required specs and the recommended specs for the PC version published 5 months ahead of time, which sounds like they're not planning to fix it before launch. And if they're not fixing it on PC, what makes you think that they're going to fix it on PS5? So, anyway, your thoughts?
Oh boy, this is a complete disaster. This is a mess that Capcom has done here, and there's no reason why this game should not be or should require a high-end CPU just to get to around 60 FPS without frame generation. I mean, I don't get it at all. I mean, you shouldn't have to buy something that's the equivalent of the latest Intel i9 or like the 3D version of a Ryzen CPU. Like, you shouldn't need that to get 60 FPS in a game without frame generation. This is horribly unoptimized. And something else that I also thought about is the fact that the PC version is also going to have de novo. So, that's not doing any favors at all. So you're having a game that is unoptimized with DRM enabled as well. So yeah, I mean, I can definitely see why it's going to require a lot. And like, the fact is, you shouldn't have to use hardware to brute force the game to run right. The game should just be running well. And something that was even mentioned here, which makes sense to me, is the fact that because the PS5 Pro uses the same CPU, if it is a CPU problem, having a Pro is not going to fix that either. You would have to have a better CPU in the PS5 Pro in order for you to actually possibly get closer to 60 FPS, which means that everywhere you go, whether it's on console or PC, bad optimization is completely going to ruin the performance of this game, which is a real shame for people who love Monster Hunter, people who have looked forward to a new Monster Hunter game, people who enjoyed the recent entries and wanted to see what happens next. It's definitely a real shame. And I mean, I'm gonna have to, I'll definitely have to send this to one of my friends, because I know that he really has been looking forward to Monster Hunter Wilds, and just like the fact that, because I know he built a new PC probably sometime earlier this year, late last year. But I definitely don't think he has or something that we've considered a high-end CPU. So that's definitely going to impact his performance in the game, and it's a real shame. I mean, personally, I wasn't going to get Wild because I'm just not in favor of what Capcom has been doing with switching out de novo for a possibly even shadier DRM. But after seeing this, it would definitely push me to, would wait a long while before I got this game, and I would get heavily discounted and also after performance patches were made, because this is not excusable. Whether it's for the PC or the console, getting 30 FPS without using frame generation, that there's no excuse for that. And even if you could say, oh, it's a next gen game, yeah, well, I mean, we've had other games that have come out in more recent times that have looked just as good, possibly even better, and still hit 60 FPS without needing frame generation. So this is inexcusable. And it's not like this is a small little indie team either. This is a major AAA company. So Definitely no excuse there.
Yeah, and I think one of the worst things about this is that Capcom usually does such a great job on optimizing their games, but it just seems
Mm.
like they've started this trend, starting with Dragon's Dogma, where they're releasing in a game essentially unfinished because it's unoptimized on console and on PC. And this one is especially concerning because of the fact that it's extremely rare that you get system requirements for a game 5 months before it comes out. The fact that we're getting system requirements already for this game, and that they're saying that you have to have frame generation. I mean, my guess is it's probably largely because of Denuvo. It's probably going to be that Denuvo is specifically the reason that they require frame generation. Denuvo's hurting the performance so badly that they have to have frame generation. But even without that, you look at Monster Hunter Rise. That game runs beautifully. On the Steam Deck, you can get 60 frames per second, no problem whatsoever. And a consistent 60 frames per second. I think you can actually pretty much get a locked 60 frames per second. But you cannot do that. But the fact that, I mean, this game is not going to do that. And yes, I know Monster Hunter Rise was originally a Switch game, but it's still like a great looking game. I mean, even though I didn't play a lot of it, everything I played, it was fantastic, you know? And I know that Wilds is taking more of the worlds aspect. I think that they're kind of like going in between, are taking the best of Monster Hunter World and mixing it with the best of Monster Hunter Rise to make Wilds. And like, okay, that's great, but if it performs like garbage, that's really going to hurt the experience for people. I mean, these games should run at 60. They should be optimized specifically to run at 60 because it's better that way. It's always better. It is not a game. I mean, if you're stuck at 30 on consoles, especially on the weaker consoles, okay. Even base PS5, I don't believe there's any reason why it shouldn't be running at 60, or at the very least have like a 40 frame per second mode, something like that. I mean, I don't even think that's really acceptable for this kind of game and for console that's supposed to be so powerful and everything else. And then the PS5 Pro, I mean, hopefully they'll at least have a 60 frames per second mode for that. But if they have 60 frames per second on there, my wonder is it going to be just running at a low resolution and upscaled? I mean, it probably would be anyway. It won't be actual 4K regardless. But is it going to be, they're just using PSSR and running the game at like 500p in order to get 60 frames per second? Or are they just not even going to bother with it? They're just going to leave it in its unfinished, low frame rate state and then maybe patch it down the line. Because it's like, yeah, they want to get it out before the end of the fiscal year, and Monster Hunter is always a really big seller, but this is something that does concern me. Now, I'm not someone who's planning to buy Monster Hunter Wilds. As it stands, like, I loved Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. I was obsessed with that game. That is probably the second or third most played game I've ever played in terms of hours. I mean, the first being Destiny 2. I think it's like Destiny 2 and Destiny 1, which I kind of really just count together because it's basically a continuation of... Destiny 2 is essentially a continuation of Destiny 1, so I kind of just count those together. So let's say collectively all of Destiny is my most played period. After that is probably Persona 4 Golden, only because I played through it several times in order to get the platinum, because I screwed up too many times to get it done in 2 runs like I should have been able to do. And then after that is Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, which I have like 200 some odd hours in, but I could probably boot it up right now while we're talking. Just because I never fully finished 3, I didn't get as much into subsequent entries, even though I really liked what I played of 4 Ultimate, and I liked what I played of Rise, and the little bit that I played of whichever was on Switch first,
Generations Ultimate?
Generations Ultimate, yeah. Though I didn't play very much of that because I just felt like I couldn't invest in it. But the thing about Monster Hunter is, like, I think that those games are fantastic, but the reality is that because of the fact that I have yet to finish it, and I technically have like 5 Monster Hunter games, I am not really, I don't have any intention to buy Wilds. But because of the fact that this is something where you're seeing this terrible performance issues, or these potential terrible performance issues, especially when you look at the system requirements for PC already being up and requiring frame generation for 60 frames per second, which it shouldn't be there, it just makes me think Capcom's going to release this game in a completely unfinished state, and they're going to be just giving people this game that's not done. I mean, I guess that's the same thing as saying it's unfinished, but point being... Alright, so let's see here. Okay, so I have 240 hours and 47 minutes. And that is without having completely finished the game. I was talking with some people on the Married to the Games Discord about this, because, I saw this thing about it potentially having bad performance on the PS5, the base version, because of what the person said who tried it out at Tokyo Game Show. A lot of people are like, oh, don't Chicken Little this, it's like, the sky isn't falling, and they have plenty of time to fix it. And it's like, I wasn't even trying to, like, rag on the PS5. I was just saying, hey guys, I just thought you might want to know this. There's the potential that this could be an issue. And, I mean, like, I wouldn't necessarily think that this is the final state, if not for what we're seeing with the PC requirements. It's just something that worries me. Not like I'm losing sleep over it, obviously. I mean, it's not that important. But it worries me that we're seeing this more and more. Companies using frame generation, requiring upscaling, and FSR of all things. FSR is garbage. The upscaling from FSR is just absolutely terrible. The frame generation is okay if you're playing on a reasonably powerful PC, because then you're not getting as much input lag. It's like, it's not nearly as noticeable. But like when I've tried using frame generation on the Steam Deck, the lag is noticeable. It's like, oh, I'm getting a few extra frames, but it's also significantly more input delay. It's like, it makes it feel like there is 0 input delay on Dark Souls in comparison. And actually, Dark Souls really isn't that bad. It's just the way it's designed is different. But anyway, I don't like this, and I hope that Capcom will actually do something to fix this. Honestly, I especially hope it for console players, because they shouldn't have to suffer just because this company is being lazy. PC gamers especially shouldn't have to, because basically, right now, the way it's looking is that they're not going to do jack with the PC version. They're just going to give us the most broken version, the least optimized, with DRM on top of it. And then they are going to say, screw you guys. And I'm sure that probably what's going to end up happening, they'll release it in this broken state where it has to have FSR and frame generation, or any sort of upscaling and frame generation. And with Denuvo attached, someone's going to break off Denuvo. Performance is going to increase by like 50% or greater, and then modders are going to fix the game. That's what I'm expecting. And then they'll get in trouble. They'll get, their accounts banned or whatever. I don't know. Maybe I'm being overly dramatic on this. I probably am, but I don't like companies doing this, because it tells me that AAA gaming is dying or dead. And I know a lot of people already think it's dead anyway. But I mean, then there's like examples of great ports of games. Like almost all of the recent PlayStation ports for PC have been fantastic. Even the ones that were PS5 based have been really good ports. But then you have Capcom just taking the easy way out. And granted, this is the first time that they are simultaneously launching on PC and consoles. but it's obvious that they are rushing this out at this point. And I have a feeling that probably they released the specs required for PC early just so that they wouldn't have to deal with it. They're just like, okay, we're just going to release these specs. This is what we have. You're just going to have to deal with it. We're going to focus on the console versions, and hopefully they'll at least do optimized ones for the consoles, because I'd much rather see the consoles at least get something good out of it, because PCs, sometimes you can brute force at least, but you shouldn't have to. FSR and frame generation should never be required. It should be completely optional if people want to do it. It's one thing when people have weaker hardware, they want to try to get a little bit more out of it, try to get above the 30 frames per second, which is what you're expected to get on the minimum requirements. But it's a whole different story when it's saying you have to do this for medium settings in order to get 60 frames per second and 1080p. That's just not acceptable. All right, I'm done.
Yeah, nothing else for me. You definitely hit it on the head.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and close out for the night. So, recommendations and dissuasions.
All right, so my recommendations, I think I've got a couple here. Let me just double check with that. Okay, actually just one recommendation. So my recommendation is to put your PC manuals away in a place where you know they'll be. I ran into that problem when I was trying to troubleshoot my PC, and I realized that I did not put my manuals away where I thought I put them back, and turns out I left them completely elsewhere. So, you know, I definitely would recommend that you put them away in a place that you know is going to be, that you know that's where they'll be, because you might not need them right now, you might not need them for a long time. But if you do need your manuals and you don't know where they are, you're gonna have a whole lot of trouble if you're trying to figure out what you need to know. So definitely put them away in a safe place.
Always good recommendation. All right. Well, my recommendation is the new series for Frasier. So, of course, I love the original series. It's my favorite TV show of all time. But the new series, both the first season, which came out last year, and the second season, which just recently started, are so good. I mean, it is on par in terms of humor with classic Frasier. There's no modern politics involved in it. It's just great humor, greatly written stories, and it feels like classic Frasier, just with a different cast of characters, and it's just super great. If you enjoyed Frasier, if you enjoyed the original series, definitely check this out. And you could even check it out if you haven't watched the original series. I mean, I think that everyone should watch the original series because it is hilarious and the jokes hold up so well even today, even though the original series came out 30 years ago, which is insane. I mean, and if you go back to the inception of the Frasier character, which was on the third season of Cheers, that was 40 years ago. So it's like, I mean, Cheers was hilarious too, but Frasier's better. But yeah, this series has been great so far. I think they've only done 3 or 4 episodes as of last Friday, which I mean, I can't remember how many episodes we watched, but we watched all the episodes that are currently available for this second season for the new series, and they've been glorious. So good, so funny, totally worth watching. That's my recommendation.
Nice.
So what's your dissuasion or dissuasions?
Yeah, so... Okay, yeah, so my first dissuasion is going to be don't build a PC, a very small form factor PC unless you are very comfortable with doing it with handling the smaller, the more tight spaces.
Yeah.
Because that's something that I've been struggling with, because the PC I built was a very small form. It's like, I think it's like mini ITX. So definitely a whole lot of cramped spaces, and trying to plug in cables was definitely very annoying, and I almost regret making it that small. I mean, granted, having something larger would have taken more space, but just as far as with putting stuff together, unplugging everything and plugging it back together, that was a hassle. So I definitely would say, do not build something that small unless you know that you're going to be fine with handling that in the future, in case you ever need to troubleshoot anything, or just maybe upgrade or something like that. Just be ready for that. So don't do it on a whim just because you say, oh, it's smaller, I like that. Be prepared for that. My other dissuasion is, do not buy the standalone version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duelist. For some crazy reason, I mean, Konami released a sort of complete edition, which is the Link Evolution, which includes the base game and all the DLC. But for some reason, they're still selling the original base version. So people have unknowingly bought the base version, not knowing there was a complete edition. And so you either have to buy all of the DLC for the game, or they might just buy the complete edition after already buying the base version of the game. So definitely do not do that. Go ahead and buy the Link Evolution game. In fact, I think recently, because I stopped my friend before he bought the base version. The base version of the game was on sale. It might not be on sale anymore. It was on sale for $5. The complete edition was on sale for $10. So for $5, you're getting the base game and the DLC. So why not just go ahead and do that? So do not buy the version that just says Legacy of the Duelist. Buy the one that says Legacy of the Duelist, Link Evolution. So that way you get a complete edition.
Yes, sir. Very good recommendation. All right. Well, I'm going to start off with something that is along the same lines as what you had. And that is, don't spend $40 on Horizon Zero Dawn for PS4. Just don't. Track down a used copy, because most likely it's going to work perfectly fine, and it's going to save you $20 or more. It's going to save you at least $20 if you buy a used copy. As long as you might have to do some digging depending on how many people have gotten wind of the price increase, but don't spend that $40 for a game that came out 7 years ago that was $20 a week ago. Just don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Save yourself some money where you can. If you really want to get this complete edition, then go ahead and do it. But if you don't care as much about the visuals, you can just buy the original PS4 version and play it on the PS5 with the 60 FPS patch, because they already have that. And you're not going to be missing anything. You're still going to get, it's not going to be as pretty per se, but it's still a great looking game. So just do it. Do it that way. My other dissuasion is going to be, when it comes to God of War Ragnarok, don't let bosses who are purple health bars intimidate you away from fighting them. Because the reality is that more likely than not, you're going to be able to handle them just fine. The biggest challenge when it comes to particularly those berserkers is not so much their levels, it's more just learning their patterns well enough to where you know how to dodge, block, etc. Now, of course, if you're fine with waiting and you just want to get your gear up to higher levels and then go back later on to face them when you're stronger, then by all means go ahead and do that. But if you're like me and you see it and you want to try it, just give it a try. See how you do, because you might be able to do just fine on your first try. I've had, I think, 2 of the berserkers I faced, maybe 3 of them, have all been purple health bars. And that used to really intimidate me, because it's like, okay, I know they're higher level than me, I might struggle with it, but I mean, one of them, of course, was one where I had fought him on PS4, so I basically knew how to avoid his attacks, even if I didn't do it perfectly. It still took me quite a while to beat him. But then the other one, I just fought my first time, and yeah, it still took me several tries to beat him, but it wasn't that bad, and it was pretty easy to figure out his patterns. Yeah. So anyway, don't let the higher level enemies intimidate you. I'm not sure yet about red bars. I haven't decided whether or not I'm willing to try my hand at that, but maybe if I come across one, I'll be like, maybe I'll just try and see how I do. Unless it's one of the fights where you have two of them in one fight, and then I might be like, maybe not that. But we'll see how things go. Maybe I'll just tell myself, this is just Ornstein and Smough again. That's all it is. Albeit with probably a much smaller arena. Okay, that's what I got. Any other dissuasions or
a question? So with does that mean red bar is harder than purple bar?
Yes, red bar is, I believe, 3 levels above you.
Okay, so it's like green, then purple, then red.
It's green is your level, yellow is a level above you, purple is 2 levels above you, and red is 3 levels above you.
Okay.
So. Yep. All right, you got anything else before we go into the rest of the stuff?
No, sir.
Okay, so where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel, I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. I put out a couple videos this past week, one talking about Ryujinx shutting down, the other one discussing the California bill that was passed. I recently got a beta code, and actually the public demo is out for this game, but as part of back in Kickstarter, I got a beta code for a game called Mandragora, which is sort of like a 2D Souls-like Metroidvania. So I'm going to play through some of that later this week and record some footage and just to show what the game is like, and sort of give my initial thoughts on that. So there should be, I'm assuming, additional content in the backer version that isn't in the free demo, so that'll definitely be interesting to see.
Sounds good. You definitely caught my attention between Metroidvania and now Souls-like. It's like, okay, I'm listening. I want to see. Oh, and the 2D also got me. So it's like,
Yes.
Hey, I'll definitely check out your video and see how it looks. See if it's something that I want to try as well. Well, you can find me on my main gaming channel, youtube.com/@thefrozengamer87. This past week, I've just been putting out clips of the podcast, broken into different segments, and I'm going to keep doing that each week because it's pretty simple to do. I can just break it up into segments as I am editing each Thursday. So that'll be simple enough to do, and that's going to be kind of like the main thing that's going to be coming out consistently for the channel, because of the fact that it is simple enough to do. Smaller segments are easier to digest, and it also gives people, it's potentially advertising for the podcast. We'll see if we get any subscribers out of it. I'm not really expecting to, but, it doesn't hurt. It can always help. You never know. Sometimes... a lot of times channels will start out very small and then they'll grow over time. I randomly discovered Justin's channel here, and some years ago, what was that, probably like 2019, and we started chatting from there and have chatted off and on, especially between comments on his videos and when I've done my 24-hour live streams, and then we've been talking and doing this podcast now for a full year, so you never know. But anyway, I am working on the comparison for Persona 4 Golden between the Switch Vita and Steam Deck OLEDs. It's going to take a while to get it all together. I'm hoping to have it out in a couple of weeks, but it mostly just depends on how much time I have to edit this weekend. I think I will have more time on Saturday than I had last week, simply because I don't have to worry about prepping for music. So that will, make it easier. But we'll kind of see how things go. Play it by ear, and when it's ready to go, then it'll go up. And the Persona 5 Royal comparison that I've at least started recording for will go up after that. Maybe not the following week, but that one won't take nearly as long to edit because it's just 2 systems. So that will save a lot of time, and I shouldn't have to re-record a bunch of stuff because of the fact that now I have a better spot to record and all of that. Then I also have my YouTube cooking channel, Not Authentic But Delicious. That's youtube.com/@NABD Cooking. This past week, or rather today, this morning, as of Wednesday, the 2nd of October, I put out my recipe for guacamole. So it is a very good recipe, very, very easy. And you can do it smooth like I did it, or you can do it chunky very, very easily. I even tell you how you can foolproof figure out if a guacamole is ripe and ready to use, because it's actually really simple, and it will save you the trouble of wasting money on avocados that are no good or not ripe if you can't wait a couple days. So I'm hoping to get the refilm the portions of my Japanese curry breakfast burrito this weekend, so that I can get that done next week. But it's really just going to depend on whether or not the curry stuff that I ordered arrives this weekend, because I don't know if it will or not. It's supposed to get here sometime between the 5th and the 7th, so it could be as early as Saturday or as late as Monday. Anyway, but yeah, I think that's everything for that. Of course, for the podcast, you can find us on YouTube at the Orange Box Podcast. If you are listening to the audio-only version, that goes up on all major podcast platforms, 12 a.m. Central Time, every Friday. If you're listening to the audio-only version, you can find the YouTube version, which is the video version. And the video version, you can see not only our beautiful faces, but clips from games we have been playing recently, as well as trailers from other games. And for both the audio-only and the video version, you get to listen to some great video game music in the background while you listen to us talk, making it a little more interesting and just letting you hear some of the great stuff that's out there. So, of course, if you'd like to reach out to us, whether it's through a comment, a question, an insult, telling us to Persona 3 ourselves, what have you, you can either comment on the YouTube version, you can send us an email, theorangeboxpodcast@gmail.com, you can write us through Twitter or X at theorangeboxpod, and if you never reach out to us, it's fine, because we're still going to talk for 2.5 hours every week, because this is how we catch up. This is an outlet to talk about video games, and it's a great time. We're going to keep doing this. We've already gone for a full year as of today, not counting the 2 episodes where the recordings got messed up, so technically more than a full year. But, yeah, I think that's everything. So, any final thoughts?
No, sir.
Well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zerocon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, Gaga Goo Goo. We are 1 year old. Orange Box Podcast out.